Chapter 88, The Truth About the Incubation Chamber 1. Zhu Tui immediately stopped and turned around when he saw that the machine Zhao Soxui was using was a medical robot. He immediately rushed into a sanitizing tunnel not far away from him. After he was sanitized, he put on his sterile cap and large white robe before returning to function room number 5. "Miss N, what do you need me to do?" And Zhao Xu's forehead was covered in sweat. She looked extremely tired the moment she opened her mouth. Energy Restoration Elixir. Inject me with a level D compound chain energy restoration elixir first. Then I need to consume 2 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs. And get 2 bottles of complex growth hormone. You'll need to be administered with it once, and administer it again after the operation. And Zhao Soxui bit her lips and said, "Find me another painkiller. The dosage of the anesthetic I set is too small. It's a little painful. Lastly, one more, bring me something to eat." "All right." Zhu Tui did not hesitate. He understood everything Zhao Soxui had said. He did not understand why Zhao Xu's finger would be broken when she was out on a mission. Why were there 2 blackened fingers that looked like they had been freshly cut in the trash can? Where did the finger used by the medical robot that was connecting Zhao Xu's severed finger come from? However, this was not the time to ask questions like that. The medical cabinet was a biological code that could only be opened within Zhao Xu's biological information. However, Zhu Tui opened the medical cabinet with just a press of his finger. When he saw the expensive energy restoration elixirs and medical elixirs on display, Zhu Tui's first reaction was, when did Zhao Soxui input his biological information? His second reaction was that Zhao Soxui trusted him that much. After finding the corresponding elixirs and taking out the medical equipment, Zhu Tui first took out a painkiller. "Miss Anne, take the painkiller first. I'll do it myself." It was only now that Zhu Tui noticed that Zhao Xu's right hand was also injured. Her entire palm was bruised and swollen. There were also burn marks on her palm. There was even a puncture wound on her palm. What kind of mission did she go on? Zhu Tui suddenly felt a little sorry for Zhao Soxui. Before this, Zhao Xu's slender fingers had looked like spring onions. They looked appetizing under the sunlight. At this moment, one of her hands was covered in bruises and wounds, while 3 of her fingers had been severed from her other hand. This was simply... She raised her right hand with difficulty, as her fingers were swollen, and Zhao Soxui could not quickly pick up the pills. She broke out in a cold sweat just trying it once. "It should be painful, open your mouth." Zhu Tui gave a direct order, and Zhao Soxui froze, then cooperated with Zhu Tui. "Drink some water." "All right, it'll take effect in a minute. I'll inject you with a level D energy restoration elixir now." Zhu Tui knew very well why Zhao Soxui only used a small amount of anesthetic when she was being treated with the medical robot. And she would only consume painkillers when it was so painful. He had just learned about this in his previous theory class. If an individual was administered with a large amount of anesthetic, it would affect their reaction speed. It might even leave a permanent effect. He looked at the back of Zhao Xu's hand. As it was swollen, he could no longer find any veins. Zhu Tui found a pair of scissors and cut off half of Zhao Xu's sleeve. He found a vein at the side of her snow-white arm and immediately released his mental senses. He found the vein and stabbed her with the needle. Zhao Soxui felt a little uncomfortable and resistant the moment his mental senses were released. However, she did not say anything in the end. Zhao Xu's condition improved greatly after she was administered with the complex growth hormone and administered with the level E energy restoration elixir along with the effects of the painkillers. However, cold sweat still formed on her forehead. "I'll wipe off your sweat, then prepare something for you to eat." Zhao Soxui wanted to refuse him. However, the sweat on her forehead had almost soaked into her eyes. She felt extremely uncomfortable. She could only close her eyes and allow Zhu Tui to wipe off the sweat on her forehead. Seeing that Zhao Xu's face and neck were also covered in cold sweat, Zhu Tui decided to make a decision. He immediately wiped off the sweat on Zhao Xu's face and neck. Zhao Xu's long eyelashes trembled when he was wiping the sweat off her neck. "I'll get you something to eat." The operation of reconnecting severed fingers was a highly complicated operation even in the Great Genetic Age. 100 years ago, only famous people from major hospitals could complete such a surgery. Furthermore, the recovery rate of most of the fingers was between 70% to 90%. What they regained were the basic functions of their fingers. However, the surgical accuracy of the medical robot at Institute 14 was nano-grade. Theoretically, a severed finger could recover 100% of its functions after it was replanted. However, it also required time. It took nearly 40 minutes for a finger to complete all of the connections. It took at least 3 hours for 3 fingers. The energy restoration elixir alone was not enough. The energy restoration elixir was only suitable for replenishing energy quickly within a short time. It could not alleviate the various bodily reactions that hunger brought about. Zhu Tui rummaged through the fridge and became a little anxious. He had cleared out all of the vegetables and fruits she had previously. He had not replenished those either. The nearest supermarket would probably take more than an hour. Students from the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College did not have to buy their own groceries. Fortunately, there were also eggs in the fridge. These things had a long shelf life. He rummaged through the drawers and found a few packets of instant noodles. Zhu Tui started to push his culinary skills to their limits. The instant noodles tasted just right even after a minute of boiling water. He added only half of the sauce to the noodles as the sauce had a heavy flavor. He fried 2 eggs and placed them on top of the noodles. He looked left and right and felt that it was lacking something. The color was lacking. Coincidentally, there was a basin peppermint in the room. Zhu Tui plucked out 3 leaves, boiled them, and placed them on top of the instant noodles. The instant noodles were the color of red soup, the eggs were golden and white, and the leaves were crisp green. It was full of colors, scents, and taste. Zhu Tui's appetite grew when he saw this. He quickly carried it over. Even Zhao Saxui could not help but swallow her saliva when she saw the 3 patches of fresh green. However, she could not take action even when she saw how delicious the food was. Even taking the pills had taken a toll on her just now, much less eating. "Missin, do you want me to feed you?" And Zhao Saxui did not speak, but she did not refuse. Zhu Tui would be a fool if he did not understand what was going on now. Girls were more sensitive. He took out a small dish and scooped out a little each time. He then fed Zhao Saxui. After swallowing half a bowl of noodles, Zhao Xu's pale face finally looked a little livelier. "Where did you get these green vegetables? Do you have any more? I want to eat some more." And Zhao Saxui suddenly spoke halfway through her meal. She was clearly a herbivore who loved to eat leafy greens. "There's more." Zhu Tui returned to the room and removed all of the leaves from the basin of peppermint. He then boiled the mint, added a little soy sauce, then added a little sugar, a little vinegar, and a little sesame oil. Beautiful! A small plate of crunchy green salad was prepared. Zhu Tui had seen Zhu Jiangguo cook this before. It was delicious and refreshing. He had succeeded on the first try. And Zhao Saxui, who was resting her left hand on the table of the medical robot, did not stop eating until the dish was gone. Of course, the dish itself was not large. And Zhao Saxui finished the last mouthful of soup before she heaved a sigh of relief. The feeling of eating is great. "Missin, have you not eaten anything these few days?" "I've been drinking the energy restoration elixir for 5 days straight. I only eat a few compressed biscuits occasionally." And Zhao Saxui finally had the strength to speak after she was full. "Missin, what did you do these few days? Why are you so severely injured and living such a miserable life?" Zhu Tui finally had a chance to ask his doubts. "Clean up first. You'll know what I did later." And Zhao Saxui pointed toward the blood on the ground and the broken limbs of the trash can. "All right." After cleaning up the trash, Zhu Tui realized that there was only 2 severed fingers in it. The 2 severed fingers were made up of fresh cuts, but the little finger was not cut off. However, there was still a small piece of bone. One side was a charred wound, while the other was a fresh incision. Zhu Tui thought for a moment before he understood. The original little finger had long been severed. The wound had also become necrotic, and Zhao Saxui had cut herself in order to reconnect the new finger. All of this made Zhu Tui wonder if Zhao Saxui had really gone to the intergalactic battlefield. Shouldn't she treat her injuries before returning to the extraterrestrial battlefield? The medical technology in an intergalactic battlefield hospital should be very powerful. It was only when he was cleaning up the medical waste that Zhu Tui noticed that there was a tall incubator standing on an operating table in room 5. Previously, Zhu Tui had been very confused as to what was in the incubation chamber that even his mind power could not enter. At this moment, the incubation chamber had already been opened. Zhu Tui screamed in shock the moment he saw the situation inside clearly. Inside the half-opened incubator stood another person, and Zhao Saxui. And Zhao Saxui was standing in the incubator. She did not even have her left hand. There was also a dismembered left hand with 3 cut-off fingers on the console beside him. Zhu Tui instantly understood where the 3 fingers that the medical robot had attached to Zhao Saxui came from. He suddenly understood that Zhao Saxui had sent him a message just now because she urgently needed his help. He could imagine how much effort it took for Zhao Saxui, who had injured both her hands, to push the incubation chamber here and cut the limbs. It was no wonder there were so many bloodstains in the tunnel. At that instant, Zhu Tui felt a little heartache and regret. He should have set Zhao Saxui as a star indicator friend. Don't look around. Come over. It's just a medical clone. What's the big deal? Ang Xiaoxu, who knew what had happened, was a little angry. Zhu Tui swept his gaze past Zhao Saxui, who had lost her arm in the incubator. He had a strange, indescribable feeling in that instant. There were 2 Zhaoxus. However, he only needed to glance at her to know which Zhao Saxui was real. Zhao Saxui, who was in the incubator, was also alive. She was still breathing. However, Zhu Tui could tell that Zhao Saxui in the incubator was not the real Zhao Saxui. She was like an object. Why? You must be scared. Weren't you very curious about what was in the incubation chamber just now? Zhao Saxui asked. Miss Anne, are the incubators in the blue-tagged rooms made up of these kinds of medical clones? Zhu Tui asked. They are all clones, but not all of them are used for medical purposes, Zhao Saxui answered. What use does I thave? Research Sarach. Do they all belong to you alone? No, there are others. Do the others belong to your teacher? Zhu Tui asked, having a guess. Some of them belong to my teacher, but some of them belong to you. Zhao Xu's answer shocked Zhu Tui. Miss Anne, there's also my clone body. When did you get this for me? Why did you get me a clone body? Zhu Tui was very shocked. A tube of blood, a few strands of hair, and a few dander would be enough to obtain all of your genetic information. I got them all the day you got your pass. As for what I want to do, you'll know immediately. Zhao Saxui looked up at the time after she said this. There are still 12 hours in effect. That's more than enough time. However, I have to hurry. Now, head over to the 40 incubators in research room number 5 that have blue tags. After you extract the cultivation fluid, push them all into this hall. Get ready for your experiment.